Black like me. Black, 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 black. Black like me. Black like me.
You're listening to Black Like Me with Dr. Alex G., a podcast that invites you to experience the world through the perspective of one black man, one conversation, one story, or even one rant at a time. Here's Dr. G.
Hey, good people. Welcome back to another exciting episode of Black Like Me with Dr. Alex G. Hey, I'm so excited about season 8 and how we've been passing the mic and having noted and experienced leaders from my community and even outside of my community who are having meaningful conversations with me about my leadership styles, experiences, shortcomings, mistakes, and it has really been an opportunity to look back and reflect on my experiences in order to give me a sense of strength and courage in looking forward. And so I'm so excited about this process, and today's episode is going to be just as powerful as any other. So I have a fellow leader from our community in the studio today, in the Black Like Me podcast studios. I have Annette Miller. She is the founder and the CEO of the Chief Engagement Consultant for EQT by Design. Annette and I have been in the community for years together. She's young compared to me. I'm sort of an old fart around here. But we were some of the younger leaders coming under the shadows of now retired or passed on leaders who really invested in us. She's lived in Madison, Wisconsin since the late 80s with her life partner, Mike, with whom she has 3 children that they've raised together. Annette's career spans decision-making roles across state and local government as an executive, also in the private sector. She brings over 25 years of strong professional policy, racial equity, analytical skills, and a wide network of community, government, and business relations. At one point, Annette was what we call now a deputy mayor. I think they called it, I can't remember what they called it.
Mayoral aide.
Mayoral aide, but that same role is called the deputy mayor. She did that. She worked real closely with a local utility company. I met her when she was in that role, and now she's broken out to run her own organization, EQT by Design. It's an organization that really ensures inclusion and engagement, that they're front and center in the workplace. And she pulls together groups for listening sessions. She's a consultant for my organization, Nehemiah, to help me create the Justified Anger Leadership Institute for emerging Black leaders. We've run several cohorts together. She's got her finger in so many things. She's certainly recognizable in our community. She was the chairperson of the Urban League Board when they built a new facility on the south side of Madison, an organization that's creating a multi-million-dollar hub. And she really helped to bring that organization into new light when it was really meeting in a house. And so it established itself, and now it's building about 60,000 square feet of co-working space and business incubator space. And so she just is a real gift to our community. She has a Bachelor's of Arts degree from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, a degree from Edgewood College, a master's degree in social innovation and sustainability leadership. And we can go on and on and on. But a trusted ally, a trusted colleague, and I'm just really glad she's here today. Annette, how are you doing? Welcome to Black Like Me.
I am so happy to be here on Black Like Me because I feel Black every day.
Come on now, right? Not just today.
Not just today, every day. And, it's truly a treasure to sit and spend time with you. We have spent a lot of time doing really good work together, sometimes with tension, a lot of times with joy. And
a lot of times with joy.
I love that we get an opportunity to just riff off of our perspectives and what we've seen in this community, because honestly, over 30 years myself in the Madison community, came in green and wet behind the ears, and had a great opportunity to learn, develop, and grow because I was able to meet great people like yourself. And if I start naming names, I'll get in so much trouble.
Sure.
But all of you know who you are in terms of who's been the foundation to which I've stood on, and the shoulders in which and the arms in which I've locked with. We've been doing great work in this community. Yes. So I feel super blessed to be here with you today.
And listen, the community is blessed because they are able to stand on your shoulders And so I'm really proud of that.
Thank you.
I've got a couple of questions for you before I pass the mic over to you. And so Annette, I always have this in my opening segments. I always have something that's called Black Icebreakers.
Ooh.
So,
Okay.
You know what? I have to tell my production team, I think I need some music, like a sound effect when I say Black Icebreakers, sort of like that game show music. Yeah, something like that. No, it's got to sound like thick ice breaking and cracking. They say, oh, snap.
Okay.
And so let me ask you this. This is something I almost ask without fail, particularly to my Black guests. Do you have a preference between grits or cream of wheat?
Oh, grits.
Come on. You're like, wait, this is easy.
This is easy. I will say, though, with my grits, as a kid, yes, I put butter and sugar in it.
Come on, that's the only way to eat them.
Well, but you got to put cheese in your grits and have cheesy grits, too. So I have, my palate has matured, and I will have cheesy grits as well as grits with butter and sugar, but grits all the way.
Does Mike eat grits?
I'm the one who eats grits.
Really? Mm-hmm. And how about your daughters? Were they grits eaters?
When they were young, I don't know now. That would be a very interesting question.
But as kids, they would do, and with butter and sugar.
Yes.
So, okay. I knew I liked you for some reason.
That's the only reason.
Yeah, well, I married a woman from Alabama, and she's like, sugar. You put butter and salt and some cheese in the grits, and so we spent years fighting over Lexi's grits. Was she gonna put sugar and be a daddy's girl? Was she gonna eat cheesy grits? And
Poor thing.
I think she does a little sugar and a little salt. So that
because that's how life really is.
Yeah,
right?
That's right. That's right. Just two more questions.
Yeah.
How often in your life have people asked to touch your hair?
Oh, So I used to get that when I was younger. So I would say probably for sure had people asking me to touch my hair all the way up until about age 30.
Up until 30?
Oh, yeah.
Is that when you stopped it?
Well, yeah, because I was like, this is my body. I need to stop this. And I think, then I'm mixed race, so I've had to navigate a lot of different cultures. I also grew up a military brat. So I am good at making other people feel comfortable.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And my mother raised me to be polite. And so I think that was at play. And then I think as I grew into my voice and I realized that that's just not appropriate and it's not okay, my hair or how I look shouldn't be a conversation topic, especially at work.
Right. Would people sometimes take liberties and just touch your hair, not even ask, but just take liberty?
Yep. And when I was pregnant, people wanted to just come up to me and, touch my belly. And I'm like, I don't know you.
Right.
Why are you touching my belly? You're not family.
That's right. I appreciate your honesty in that because many of our listeners are white and they want to sit in on honest dialogue that African American people are having about their experiences, and I think that they're floored with the degree to which so many Black women say the same thing. Like, well, yes, of course, because in their experiences, people don't just walk up and just say, "Oh, your hair looks cool. Can I touch it?" So I love that you're doing this and that you're stating this so honestly. And this is just rhetorical. We don't have to go down this rabbit hole, but it does make you wonder what is the fascination with Black hair.
Well, I mean, that's historical, right? Like,
Yes.
we've always been seen as exotic because there's a lot of misinformation about, Africa,
Sure.
our place in society.
Right.
And I think that's also has to do with people just privilege and sort of making assumptions about what they can sort of control or do without even thinking about it, such as coming up to somebody and thinking that it's just like somebody coming and butting up in somebody in front of the line. Right. Like, a lot of people, men, take up a lot of space and will just step up and just, they expect to be taken care of because historically that was the way. And I think also too, when we talk about being taken care of, who's doing the taking care of? And who is not. And so I think that people have made assumptions about, personhood.
No, that's a good point.
It's such a big. I'm trying to keep it small.
No. You're doing a great job. I remember growing up in Madison. They forced showers in gym in fourth grade. So fourth grade, we were introduced to the shower world, and I can remember coming out of the shower and my classmates touching my hair saying, Alex, your hair is not wet, because their hair fell when it was wet. And I still had a mini afro. And, you know, you're trying to get dressed and people are like touching your hair like,
Right.
oh my gosh, your hair's not wet. Your hair's not wet.
Right.
And, you know, so folks who may be listening may think, well, you know, people don't mean any harm. And we're not saying whether they're meaning it or not, but the impact is, why do I remember that 50 years later? Because at that moment, you're not a
Right.
fourth grader.
Right.
You're not a kickball player. You're not a
Right.
basketball player. You're this oddity.
Yep.
You're standing naked in the locker room trying to get your drawers on.
Right.
And people are saying, your hair's not wet.
Right.
Like, what's...
Right.
And so, there's a whole lot of things that are kind of new in that context.
Right.
And then you're the oddity.
Well, you're
and one
somehow...
of two black people. One or two or three
Right.
black people also, and everybody's hands are in your hair.
Right. Well, and I just feel like, you know, we're here for your learning, which is not true.
Right.
This isn't the zoo. We're not an exhibit.
Keep your hands inside the cart.
Keep your hands inside the cart, or you might get hurt.
Ooh, that's the first time we got that one. I like that. That might be... Oh, but last question.
Yes.
And then, have you ever been complimented as being articulate?
Of course. In the business world. So, you know, I was... Now, remember, and just for full disclosure, I think, you know, I'm 54. So I'm in the, in the 90s. I'm black, I'm female, I'm a mom. And on the outside, I never look my age. So I always looked young, always looked new on the scene, even though that might not actually be the case. And then, you know, also too, just, you know, when we talk about what is beauty, you know, all of that's at play, long hair. So, you know, things like people would be never paying attention to my work, but paying attention to sort of the outside traits of who I am. You brought up hair, how I speak, how I dress. And then there was a question in testing of, well, does she really know what she's talking about? So people would like to put popcorn, you know, surprise comments and tests questions to really see if I really knew what I was talking about, or just let me sink or swim and assume that, you know, we're not going to give her any help. She can figure it out, because should she really be in this space? And I think for me personally, I was in a space of being in the business world where women were mainly seen in an administrative role, and I was interacting with men all the time. And so I was always in this awkward spot of being a professional, but being pushed and pulled in old stereotypes about the role of women in the work world, and, you know, just having to ride that wave. So I did get a lot of macro and microaggressions about my place and space in the business world.
And when you present it, when they want to compliment you, they'd say, you are really articulate, which means you sure speak English well.
Right.
Which
and be amazed at how much I knew and how much I brought, and be surprised that, you know, I'm bringing ideas that really can work, which, quite frankly, you know, that pushed me to really end up really trying to work with BIPOC leaders and women. I found that was the safest space for me, and that's where I really got most of my growth. I was really fortunate. For me, when I look at my resume, a lot of the people who I worked for were either women or women of color, and I think, and that's all has to do with why I'm as good as I am, because I got those experiences.
Sure. Yes, and that's why more inclusion, diversity, and inclusion, belonging in the workplace is so important.
Right.
Well, you know what? With that, I'm going to pass the mic over to you, because I really, I'm just looking forward to continuing the conversation with you. But I'd like for you just to take the lead and just asking questions that you've observed about things I've done or things I've tried to do or have not done. The ball's just in your court for us just to talk for the next bit of time, just to discuss my leadership experiences.
Watch out, everybody.
Uh-oh.
We might have to grill.
Oh, snap.
All right. So I was thinking about a couple things, because we've had a long relationship and we've worked on a lot of big initiatives together. So initiatives that, are kind of past and present.
Yes.
I think about, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, when we were doing things like State of Black Madison.
Right.
When we would try to pull leaders together into a room that were Black and Latino, Hmong, et cetera, and try to talk about, like, what do we need? How are we going to talk to funders? How do we talk to policy people about what we need? And so we'd have these, in the behind the scenes conversations offline with folks. And now, I would say in the last, 5 or 6 years, we did our Madison Plan.
Actually, about almost 10 years ago.
Is it 10? Okay, see, time's going by really fast.
Is.
So 10 years ago, our Madison Plan, now we've got the Center for Black Excellence that's happening. We've had the Justified Anger Leadership coming out. I'm just wondering, like, how would you connect the dots between how we used to convene as Black and brown people in this community and how it looks now? Like, what are you observing? And, to your point, it's 20 years, 25 years difference. What do you see?
Sure. I see a number of things. Annette, when you and I came into our leadership roles, you worked in state government. I worked for the University of Wisconsin, which is part of state government.
Right.
There were things like WAPSI, the Wisconsin Association of Black State Employees.
Yes.
Black folks found money to recruit, to train, to bring Black people into key state positions. The state of Wisconsin and the University of Wisconsin-Madison were great draws for Black people from the South, from the upper Midwest, into the state of Wisconsin.
Yep.
So we had that experience, and you and I stood on some of the shoulders of those giants who made that space work, who really cut their teeth, so to speak, in state government. But then we started finding out that those folks were leaving Madison because they weren't finding a sense of community and cultural relevance. And they were always the first and the only, and didn't like that pressure of being always referred to as articulate or being asked to touch their hair, or trying to fend for their children because they wanted someone to look like them in the classroom, in administration, and particularly in the textbooks. And so I feel that we were coming up in Madison where diversity sort of crept up on Madison. It's not like Madison necessarily said, we want great diversity. I think it became in vogue. Madison saw people coming in and thought this would make us look better as a city, not really counting the cost of what that would mean. So when they did gather, whether it was United Way or the funders or the city, I don't know if you remember the old unified grants, those places and space where you fill out one application for all of these entities, we were really put in a room and told what to do. Here's a pot of money.
Right.
We fast forward. I say this I say this with a bit of caution because I don't want to sound full of myself. But there was a trajectory that happened. It was Clean Care's work with Madison Prep and saying our kids need support.
Yep, 100%.
It was Race to Equity that talked about the disparities of Black people in 2013. It was the State of Black Madison that happened actually going back in 2010 at the Urban League.
Yep.
No one paid attention to that report. It stated the same things that the Race to Equity reported about the disparity of Black people.
Oh, yeah.
It talked about the same things that I talked about in my article. But because it was pre-social media and it was pre-giving a damn, that people just sort of tucked it away and didn't really pay a lot of attention. I still have it in my office because Miss Malele came over, and ironically she said, Reverend G, we came up with these findings, but we need somebody to actually help do something about it. And maybe we could run some of it through Nehemiah. And I was like, I don't have the staff I don't want that burden.
Right.
But I never forgot that the work of defining the issue had happened. But the plan and the dollars to address it hadn't. So when I had my experiences of being pulled over by the police a couple of times in Madison, being called a nice, safe Black person who wasn't an angry Black man at downtown Rotary, and I wrote Justified Anger, I think what happened is because I grew up here as a Cub Scout, went to school in South Madison, went to UW-Madison, delivered newspapers. I did all the kinds of things. I can remember when Rocky Rococo's open. Like I have that institutional memory of being a Madisonian. When I wrote that article, that op-ed piece that went viral, people couldn't say I was lying because all the police would have to do is say, we never pulled him over. There's no record of it. People knew me, where I worked, where I lived, and I kept sticking to the same story. I think because it was hard to tear it apart because I stated in it my love for Madison, but my hatred for how we're treated. It caused the city to be hamstrung a bit to say, crap, we can't shut him up because he's one of us. He's not an outsider, but he's telling the truth. And I think it made the non-Black community lean in to listen. And then I think it allowed other Black people who have been already saying things. I will never say I'm the first to say anything, but I think while all of those things were happening, to write a piece and to be articulate, I wrote it. No one interviewed me. I wrote Justified Anger. I think in that articulation of my experiences, caused people to say, well, if this is the case for him, maybe it's the case for so many other people. So I think the perfect storm of the State of Black Madison, Madison Prep, race to equity, all of the things that were going on. And then I write Justified Anger. And I think people wanted to hear a different perspective. And I think it opened a door. We're not responsible for what the other groups are doing. But I think we did help people to say it's now or never, because white people were leaning in, business people were leaning in. It's very similar to what we saw during COVID and during the murder of George Floyd. People said white people are listening and they're leaning in. People were leaning in when Justified Anger was written. So I think it opened the door for other people to bring their voices in. We did not create that, nor did we create the space. I think we just cracked something that made people say, well, Annette, do you feel this? Brandy, do you? Kaleem, do you? Vanessa, do you? Michael, do you? Lisa, Laleta, do you all feel this? And found out that we were all having these same experiences while being the quintessential experts, professionals, employees, and community representatives of diversity inside these major organizations. They had no idea, because we were so proficient and professional, that you all felt the same way I did. And I think that just opened the door for more of us to begin to speak up and make our needs known.
I love that.
That was a long answer, but I'm sorry.
It was a long answer, but I think people need to understand that it's the long answers that are important. We didn't just arrive and show up. We've been here. It's about, can you see, and are you looking? Are you listening? And, are you changing yourself to be able to continue to look and listen? Don't look and listen for a moment.
But can you really lean in?
Can you really lean in?
And Annette, can I throw something else in? And this is where I want to really give kudos to you and my fellow leaders who are Black, because we're not Black leaders. We are leaders who are Black. Your degree is in English, in innovation and sustainability, or sustainability leadership, not in Black sustainability leadership. Correct. And so what happened was we rallied the Black community around Justified Anger. I tried to put together a coalition, whatever that meant. I didn't know what that meant. People just sort of give me words and names. But when we got together to say, let's write what moving the needle would look like, which became our Madison Plan. You'll probably reference it later. But what I will say is, you were one of the co-chairs of one of the segments, and we had Gloria Latson-Billing from, historic, iconic educator from the University of Wisconsin. Dr. Jack Daniels is the president of Madison Area Technical College, Madison College. We pulled in this great group of Black folks. In fact, we met in our church basement over here, and Daryl Bazell, one of the vice chancellors from UW, facilitated a meeting as we began to shape what this would look like. I think it scared the crap out of the white community, because they couldn't point to that group of people and say, well, these are the Black people who are struggling with the rigor of Madison Metropolitan School District. These are the people who don't understand how to use bus vouchers or how HUD housing works. These are the people who are making them rich and making them famous because we were doing great work for them. And we're sitting in a room saying, oh, hell no, y'all are treating Black people wrong. I think that level of pull and rowing in the same direction was historic. And I think what was the proverbial nail in the coffin was when Cap Times came back after not only publishing Justified Anger, but they published, do you remember this, Leadership Matters? It was a Black cover. It said Leadership Matters. And then you open up and it was just sort of a bio on each of the Black folks who were involved. They wanted to do a group photo, but I said, no, we're not going to do that, because you get some people not make it, and then it seemed like we're half-cocked. But they said Leadership Matters and basically just exposed Black leadership and what we wanted. And I felt like that was the beginning of giving us a platform in a major newspaper that had claimed to be liberal and progressive, but never really allowed us to tell our stories so profusely and continuously in print. And I feel like because we worked together and we made the statement that leadership matters, we were doing more than just asking.
We weren't asking for permission.
For permission. We were taking it.
We were taking it. And I also think that it laid the seeds, it planted the seeds for what we're seeing today, right? Like,
Yes.
look around us now. I mean, in Madison, you see Black and brown people leading on issues that matter.
Yes.
Across the community, in business and in nonprofit, in fun ways and not so fun ways, on real deep ways that are trying to transform, lives, people's lives. I'm hoping that people understand that, as from a racial, ethnic, and cultural perspective, we cannot separate ourselves. We can't. It's difficult to be like, I'm human. It's like, yes, I'm human, and these issues impact me too.
Right.
Right. It isn't just about how much income you have. Racism is real.
Yes.
People don't only just look at my income and
Right.
decide that, I can or cannot do something. They are
Right.
looking at my race, right? They're looking at your race.
Right.
And they're looking at us in that way. We're very visible people. And I think that was something that was very difficult for, I think, the white community to understand, because that is not a rubric by which they are measured by.
Correct.
They never had to think about that no, you can't come here, or no, you can't be in this room, you can't be part of this group, or we're going to speak in a certain way so you're not part of the conversation. I mean, I don't think people really understand that was the level in which we were operating. So
Right.
I feel like this is such a transformational time for us to really be able to name and say, here are the needs of the community, and we want to have strong investment, not $5. Strong
and ongoing.
deep and ongoing, sustainable, investments, so that when you take care of the community take care of you. We
Yes.
don't. No one loves the survey that says there's two Madisons. No one wants to hear that
Right.
anymore. We want to hear about how we're all representing and a part of Madison in our own way, and we can coexist together,
Sure.
right?
And we want to see and experience that Madison, and not just hear about it. We want to see and experience.
We want to see it and hear it and be it. And I think that's what's exciting. So let's jump to Park Street. I mean,
Yes.
It is jumping
Yes, it
on
is.
Park Street. Park Street looks so different today than it did 30 years ago. There's a lot happening in the community. Tell me a little bit about how that excites you, and what do you see? How does it
Sure.
look for you?
Sure. Fortunately, we have people who are listening from all 50 states and probably over 80 countries around the world. Park Street is a major thoroughfare that connects our highway, we call it our Beltline, and the campus. And it's been really the heart of the multicultural community. I grew up off Park Street, and it was always largely Black, white, and Latino, and then in the mid-'70s, Southeast Asian, as Cambodian and Vietnamese families came to Madison, and then later Hmong and Laotian families. But it's really considered the heart of the South Side. The Urban League has a major project that's going on that's called The Hub. We have the Center for Black Excellence in Culture. We're focusing on cultural celebrations, visual arts, performing arts, lectures, innovative space for social entrepreneurs to come together and create avenues for their own intellectual property to pay their bills and give them a chance to work for themselves, and a place to really train students in STEAM and STEM education as we prepare our Black students for the future, but also a space to invite our non-Black allies in, non-Black children in, to learn about the contributions of Black people from Africa, the Caribbean, folks who identify as Afro-Latino, and African Americans, and our contributions to the state of Wisconsin and the region. You have Jack Daniels has led the charge to build Madison College. You have Kaleem Care not far from us, is off Park Street. You have things that Michael Johnson's working on for these Black and brown, and then you have Central Espano. My friend Karen is under her project is undergoing a major development, and among the major projects, she's the only woman that's leading one of those campaigns.
That's right.
And when you total our campaigns, it's well over $100 million.
$100 million.
$100 million from Black and brown people.
Yes.
And Ruben, who's leading the hub, he's the Urban League CEO and developing the hub, and Karen, and we're often on panels together. And we always get the question like, are you competitive, or how do your programs work together? And Karen,
the same way that McDonald's and Burger King and Wendy's does, people.
Right. They work to. I used to. We are happy to see it happen. We're happy to see it take place. And so I'll get text messages from Ruben saying, "Hey man, leave some of this money out here for us. Every place I go, they say, oh, Reverend G's already been there. But hey, man, congratulations on getting the Green Bay Packer grant. I said, well, hey, congratulations on getting the Mackenzie Scott grant. And so we're cheering each other on because we believe that it all needs to happen. But to see this take place in a community that I've grown up in, to have us boldly talk about the space for Black and brown innovation, while also saying to white gentrification, not on our watch. We see you creeping south on Beltline to an area that has been either the most or the second most diverse zip code in the entire state of Wisconsin.
Well, do we want to have that conversation? What?
Yes, we do. Well, I think we need to. So now you see all this gentrification,
right?
Because Black folks and brown folks have made this space beautiful, and now people understand its proximity to the Beltline, which gets you to the east and west side. Its proximity to the university is now considered the biomedical corridor of South Madison. But this is where Black people's grandmas worked, caught the bus to go to campus, Madison General, Oscar Mayer, all these things to work and to give us life in that community. And now, is gentrifier a word? The white gentrifiers are coming, buying up buildings and pricing Black and brown people out of a community that has traditionally been a place not only where we've lived, where we've thrived and created culture.
Right. Well, and remember, we were pushed over here
from the
bush, right, over here, and now here we are again. Right.
The bush was Italian and Jewish and Black families where they lived, and then we were pushed out of there. Black people stumbled into South Madison, and now there's a new push,
and we've made it home.
We made it, yes.
Right. It's home for lots of different people. And I just think that, the conversation about gentrification, some of it is policy driven. A lot of it is policy driven. It's about the numbers, right? But I think that we need to slow down and go, but these are people. This is where people live. People are trying to stay in Madison. This is their home. This is their legacy. Everybody has a legacy.
Exactly.
And we need ours too. And so I think it's really great that all of these organizations, including your own, have worked really hard to create anchors. By creating anchors, you're putting a line in the sand and saying,
that's exactly
stop.
what we're doing.
Right. And being a buffer and pushing back. But I also think that there's a lot of people out there who are working in alignment to help stop that gentrification too. So I think we're more aware of the impact of gentrification now. I think in the past we were not,
We had our heads in the sand or someplace else.
Yeah.
Like we did with gang violence years ago. Like, oh no, not here. And then another, something that I think is very refreshing about what's happening in the development I'm seeing down the Park Street, the South Madison corridor, is not only, again, $100 million plus raised for capital structures, but funders are saying we want to be program partners as well. Almost every partner that's given resources for the Center for Black Excellence and Culture has also said we want to be program partners as well. That's brand new. It used to be that if the funders would help you start an initiative, and I don't even mean capital campaign, it could be a program. 2 to 3 years, you better find a way to sustain it.
It was seed money. It wasn't sustainability money. It was seed money. And they're actually going on record saying, how do we seed this? Because when COVID kicked off, the funders got together and asked what we needed. And what they meant was relief, to get people food, to get them masks, sanitizer. The question is different now. We're not just talking about how do we get someone through the next several months. What do we need to do to really thrive? And just to loop back to our Madison Plan, and Eli, my producer, will make sure that we have a link in the notes section of this episode. We'll have a link to our Madison Plan. It's like a 70, 80-page document that this team wrote. The whole idea was, what do we need to do to move the needle? So many things that we talked about in that space is happening.
It's happening. And people thought that the Justified Anger Coalition was going to make it happen. And we kept saying, and you said it to me early on, Alex, you didn't create this problem. You can't fix it. Others have got to move.
We all
and
have
so
to be a part of it.
when I see Park Street, I see a place I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
I see places where we shopped at Kroger Foods. I bowled at Burroughs Bowling Alley, ate at Mark's Big Boy, Long John Silver, Eagle Foods. I still see these places where I grew up. But I also look back to almost 10 years ago when a number of us as Black influencers created this beautiful document that was called the Our Madison Plan. It was the what if document.
Mm-hmm.
What would it take to feel like the needle is being moved? One of the recommendations that came out of the committee that I think, who did education? I think that was Kaleem and Dr. Gloria Ladson-Billings. But one of the recommendations was that Black students should be able to have associate degrees by the time they finish high school. Mm-hmm. Well, Madison College has worked that out with the Madison Metropolitan School District.
Right.
And so kids are now graduating with, my goddaughter just went through that program. She's at Whitewater. She went into Whitewater with 50 college credits. Do you know how much money that's saving her family?
Right,
50,
right.
But that was a pipe dream.
Right.
Years ago. So I look back not only on the construction in that, but I look back on the vision of brilliant Black people who stepped out of their own organizations and just became community influencers and lived and dreamed and poured their lives into this document that's shaping what we're doing. And we knew we had to fight the microaggressions, but I also saw that if we didn't have a physical space to come together and continue that kind of collaboration, we would begin to wane. And so that even inspired the discussion that led to the Center for Black Excellence in Culture, because it showed these pressures are real. And if Black people don't have places to go and convene, you said this, when we have our own space, we heal ourselves. So you
That's
think
right.
I'm not listening to you, but you said we heal ourselves. I said we need a place where we can heal, but that all came out of that plan.
No, that's real. And what I want to add to what you're saying is that I really encourage for all of you listening to go to Our Madison Plan, because it's really easy to identify the people who are more visible, right? There were so many people who are in our community who were part of Our Madison Plan that you need to just take a look at that list. Those are the unsung heroes.
Yes.
Those are the unsung heroes. Take a look at that list. You see those people in the community. And again, what's really hard about some of these discussions is once you start naming names, somebody gets offended. So I'm not even going to go down that road. But look at Our Madison Plan, because each of those topics had easily 5, 7, 10 people.
Yes.
We had 50 to 70 people from the community who were African American identifying, working on workforce and education and housing, homelessness, incarceration, and they are still, then and now working on it too, and really even more visible in some ways, or just still doing what they do, which is just, doing what they're called to do, which is just do it, know.
Why support Black Like Me podcast? There are very few places where Black activists and innovators can listen to and hear someone so aptly and culturally appropriately voice their concerns and dreams and aspirations and fears and illnesses and cultural commonalities. Equally, there are so few places where concerned non-Black thinkers and feelers, readers and watchers, lovers of culture, stalwarts of racial justice and harmony can go to learn, lean in, and to be a quiet fly on the wall in Black spaces and experience deep personal transformation through listening to honest Black people's truth. Black Like Me podcast is that for so many people in this nation and around the world. Now, while your financial support beginning at as little as $2 a month will get you access to pre-released information, updates, conversations, insights, and exclusive events, your support also affords us the opportunity to expand the quality and reach of our excellent programming in thoughtful and authentic ways to more and more people. And more importantly, white people need to stop trying to get free shit from Black people. All right, seriously, your financial support is a vote of confidence, and it's an enabler of vision and innovation. So why not click that link today and join the movement? I want to thank you in advance for your support and your partnership.
it was a clarion call for leaders to come together around key topics: education, incarceration, workforce, economic development,
Yes.
and map out a plan, and garner resources, and tell funders, we're not waiting for you to tell us how you're going to help us work in our community. We're going to tell you what our communities need, and we want you to support us.
That's right.
And then that's when you and I had that conversation off the cuff, and you were like, well, this $5 million. I was like, we need to be asking for $20 million, 25. And you were like, really? And I was like, yeah. I mean, like, we didn't get to these problems ourselves. I mean,
Right.
Look at other big funders and what they have to work with in terms of foundations. And we can't, that's like giving $5.
That conversation, Annette, blew my mind. Mm-hmm. And if you remember at the rollout, we called it the rollout of the Our Madison Plan, I actually said we're coming to you. I think we only raised about $175,000, $200,000. I said, but in a few years, I'm coming back for $20,000. So when Madison Gas and Electric gave us $250,000 for the center, Gary, your former boss, pulled me to the side. He says, Alex, remember at that rollout meeting, you said you're going to come back and ask the community for $20 million, and doggone it if you haven't done it and gotten it and have raised it. But that idea, that concept, and even that figure, Annette, started from a conversation that you and I had about this is larger than just the peanuts they're just trying to throw at us. And so,
right.
And here we are. These years later, people are listening to us, and we're listening to ourselves. We're listening to each other.
That is the key. I think we finally have been able to break the chains of having to, have our hands out and hope that somebody's going to tithe for our community problems. Now we're like, no more. We're not waiting. We're not asking. We're telling. We're demanding. And in fact, we're going to go find our resources wherever they are.
Exactly.
And we're going to ask our own community. Our own community has been stepping up. Not
Amen.
just the philanthropy community, but our own community, because I think they do see it, and they're excited and they're motivated.
Definitely.
Because they're tired too. And I guess that then brings me to this point about, Black leaders and leaders who are Black. And really just, what's your thinking now about that? I mean, it's always sort of a controversial statement.
Sure.
How do we need to be thinking about that? How do we need to, ourselves as Black folk, how do we need to be thinking about ourselves in leadership roles? And how do we want others who are not Black to be thinking about us and leadership?
Great question. When you think about how you and I were identified as leaders who are Black, it wasn't because white people called us that. General Colcroft took you under his wing. That's a cousin of mine. When we went to his mother's memorial service, and I was like, Annette, what are you doing here? He said, Bob Colcroft gave me away at my.
Yeah.
Was that Bob's memorial service, or that was his mom's? That was his mom's.
That was his mom.
And you said he gave me away at my wedding. I was like,
yeah,
he's a G. Our great grandfathers were brothers,
right?
And so we had people who called us out. Betty Franklin Hammond, others called us out. Mm-hmm. I think what's happened now, is that white people and influencers who are never called white leaders, they never have to carry that moniker or the weight of it, will pick Black people and call them a Black leader. And so you can easily watch television news and someone will say a group of Black leaders, and you look at them and say, I don't even know who they are. It used to be that when Black people picked us, folks knew we were being nurtured and developed because the community knew us, because the community chose us. So what we got to think about is we need to identify and develop our own leaders, because if we don't, white people will. And they will pick people who don't necessarily push them. Mm-hmm. I remember a white influencer, wouldn't call himself a leader, but he asked, who should I listen to? Who in the Black community should I listen to? I said, whoever pisses you off. Whoever's making you mad, that's probably who you need to listen to at that moment. But I wasn't going to make it easy for them. But I'm seeing a preponderance of white people picking their leaders and then pitting them against leaders that have been identified by the Black community. So I think I don't know if I would say what I think differently about leadership now, as much as what I see clearly about leadership is that you get asked up, because that's a lot harder than being asked back down. I think you lead. People select you not only because of capability, but because of proven actions. I think sometimes people, because they're intelligent, think that they're ready for leadership. And leadership is more than being smart. Leadership is about taking action, diffusing situations, creating solutions, working together, and being a part of the solution.
And also carry the burden, because sometimes you're making decisions that are not easy, and it hurts, right? And there's a responsibility that comes with it. It isn't, and so I think, in addition to all of that, what you shared in terms of what's a leader, I think also too, I think we need to realize that no one needs to name us.
Right.
No one needs to name us. You can be a leader in the moment, or you can be a leader for all time. Because
you and I weren't looking to be found. We were just looking to do our job.
We're just doing what we have been called to do. Right. And I think that, there's a lowercase L and there's a capital case L. And I think, good point, it's been an easy way for, the broader community to be able to say, here's somebody. But I think we also have an opportunity to say, who do we want to lift up? And who do we want to give opportunity to? Because all hands on deck, everybody.
Right. And,
lots to do.
Yes. And Annette, one of the things I want to expose is that in this community, and I'm sure in others where listeners are catching this podcast, there's a sentiment. Sometimes it's more covert than at others, that Black people don't work well together, that we don't get along. But I don't think people understand how much white interference, white noise there is in the community. I've had discussions with people in the early stages of dreaming of the center. And I've said, don't say anything to anyone, because we're looking at maybe working with this individual. If I said their names, you'd know them. I get a call from my colleague, not too far from here, purposely not saying names. I get a call from my colleague saying, hey, your boy came right over here and told me X, Y, and Z. There's no way my colleague would know that if this white person hadn't gone in, then asked, how is that going to affect your funding? Not just, do you know he's doing this?
Right.
Now, what he didn't know is that we were friends and colleagues, but that could have set up some real tension in the community. Or being asked, well, what do you think about this leader? What do you agree with that leader? And so I just want to say, for the record, it takes a lot to be Black and to lead. You have to not only be comfortable in your community, but you have to be head and shoulders above your white counterparts in order to win their approval of being articulate and sharp, and to do that dance, to know how to move and move within your community, and how to move and move within the white community is very, very tricky. And then to have other people intervening and trying to pit you against the other is really, really problematic. And so I just want people to know that when you see folks who are Black, who are leaders and effective leaders, they have come by that position rightly. It's not because their parents have sold a business and put them in a position. They've had to fight this uphill battle. And of course, there's Black jealousy, because there's human jealousy. But the intervention, because the white community is convinced that there can only be one Black leader. That's why they want to know who is the Black leader, who speaks for you. They never have that pressure. They will never say the mayor speaks for us, or the governor speaks for us, or the county executive. And so I just wanted to say that there's pressure from the white community, not only picking our leader, but trying to then, of those who have been identified, trying to figure out who's the real leader and who's the right leader, and which Black leader can they influence.
And I think the real message is that, the Black community and the Latino community and the Hmong community and all the other Native Indigenous communities, we are like white communities. It's a spectrum. And, in that spectrum, you have all types of leadership, you have all types of creativity, and you have all types of people and I think that what we're letting go of is we're letting go of this idea that there are only that only a few can represent the many.
Right.
And I think that really is the bigger message, that there are all different types of people in this community who are Black and brown and intersectionalities of that, who all have a place and space in representing who we are, what we want, what we appreciate, what we don't appreciate, and we're making the space.
Sure.
We're not asking for it. We're making the space. And, that goes back to the work that we're doing at Equity by Design, is that we're really building bridges to make sure that all voices are heard. But in particular, Black, Indigenous, people of color, Latinx, et cetera. We want all of those voices to be heard. And I think that's what society needs to let go of, is that there isn't one voice. There isn't one leader. There's many people with many ideas, and all of them are important, right? And I think that's what's exciting about Park Street, is that is manifesting, that we have this co-created space. We've got this deep investment, $100 million of investment.
Yes, $100 million.
That actually is just going to grow in increment. And when Race to Equity talked about what it's financially going to cost to really help lift, African Americans out of poverty, this is the type of investment that pays it forward.
Yes.
And that's what's so beautiful about it. And if you look at all the leadership that's responsible for it, a lot of people get to pat their back in terms of being a part of it. And I think that's something significant that we all have to hold on to.
Yes.
Here's a question I have for you.
Sure.
Any regrets?
Regrets.
Any regrets when you and I don't know if you want to pick a particular, let's just look at the current project that you're working on, Center for Black Excellence, or even our Madison Plan, because it's got more longevity in terms of how it's played out. Anything that you would do differently, or anything that has been an aha for you?
Sure.
That really emerges?
Sure. That's another great question. I would say that so many of my mistakes or missteps have caused me to come back stronger and harder. So there are probably several things that I would write better reports on grants I received so we can get more money. But I would say I think a real regret is I didn't understand how to integrate myself. That to some, I was a pastor, as a nonprofit leader, as a former university employee, but I now introduce myself when people say, "What do you do?" I say, I'm a serial social entrepreneur. I've created, I realize in that I have 50 people on the payrolls of the various organizations that I run. And I just realized that in the last few months, because someone asked me to count up, how many staff do you have at the church? How many at Nehemiah? And I started thinking about this. I would have stepped up and I would have given myself permission to be more integrated and not be pigeonholed into one particular group. The other thing that I would have done differently is that I would have valued the fact that I'm a thought leader, and Black people don't get to be called thought leaders. We're social justice folks. We can create movements. We can shut stuff down, but we don't really write policy unless we work in the state government. We don't really challenge people's thinking, and that's really who I am. When I wrote Justified Anger, I should have never been pressured or funded to create or try to create a movement. That put pressure on me because what that meant was you came up with a brilliant idea that was the 11th most read story of the entire year, and it came out December 18th. Only had like a shelf life of 12, 13 days. Someone should have said, let's bring him and others to the table. Let's take notes and let's help to create or fund what he's talking about. But I felt like the response was, well, if we can't do it, you think you can do a better job, then here's some money. So what are you going to do?
Right.
So immediately I had funders asking me how I was going to change grade point average in Meadowwood. And the superintendent of schools was never asked that question. With a $500 million budget, the superintendent was never asked, how are you going to change grade point average? They want us to do it in a year. And I felt under that pressure. Now, when I created the U.S. Black History course, you've gotten to know Dr. Christy Clark-Bajara because she's come to our leadership leadership institute. We took 5,000 white people through this course, but some of the funders were asking me, "Why are you doing this? Like, why aren't you doing things with Black people in the why?" He said, "I see these people everywhere I go. They get it." And I said, well-meaning white people in Madison are part of the problem. But the idea was stay in your lane. If I probably had a couple of glasses of wine, I would say stay in your place, boy. They didn't say that to me, but that was the sentiment. Why are you over here messing with white people when black people are screwed up? Go out, go to your people, go fix your people.
Right.
And so, but what I was trying to do was to find my own leadership, because what the history class and the discussions I had, and understanding that in those listening sessions to write our Madison Plan, the underlying cry was black people want space. We want space to be ourselves and to heal.
Yes.
So then when I had a discussion with some of the leaders of the economic development piece of our Madison Plan, I was meeting with Ray Allen and a few others, we had discussions about black buildings and black space.
Right.
That evolved into the Center for Black Excellence in Culture. So here it is, $35 million project that really grew out of our Madison Plan discussions. And so while the white funders were trying to point me back to my people, get back to the urban space, get back to the projects, I was trying to think of how do I create something that will really change life, not just for black people, not just for brown people, but for the broader community. But at every turn, it was like, think small, get some pencils, get some lunch boxes, get some bus passes. And I'm trying to think of something that's tens of millions of dollars. And so I'm here, so I can't complain that the journey didn't get me here. But what I would have done differently is I would have given myself credit for being a thought leader, and I wouldn't have taken the bait from white funders to try to fix something that they allowed to happen. Because much of what we're dealing with can be fixed if it's properly funded and you have right leadership.
And it's scaled right.
Right. And so I think what I would have done differently, I mean, because I look at the success I'm having, so I don't want to sound like, it's hard out here raising tens of millions of dollars. But the point is, it took me a long time to realize I can be a thought leader. I can influence systems. I can demand that systems be changed, and I can do more than just help black people with their GPAs. I can help white systems and the systems run by white people and designed for white people to actually rethink and become dismantled and rebuilt. I would have become that person sooner, but it took me a long time to value who I really was, because they were treating me like I was a social service worker and not like I was a social scientist who had theories that could really change the trajectory of life here. I would have realized who I was a long time ago, and I would have missed a lot of stress by trying to fix problems that weren't mine to fix.
But I do think that that's happening now, and it's paying forward now, because I think that the community does look at leadership, and especially black and brown leadership and other identities of leadership that are not white, much differently. They aren't asking them, can I touch your hair? They're not saying, oh, you speak so well, or, oh, I love your outfit.
Or I bet you can dance.
Oh, I bet, yeah. Or what food do you eat?
Hamburgers.
I want hamburger and fries, please.
Right.
I do feel like that's...
I like the black menu at McDonald's, please. May I take your order, please? Welcome to McDonald's. I like the black menu, please.
Right. So I think Park Street offers an opportunity for it to be a reflection of what it means to be multicultural. And when you think about multicultural, that includes all the different dimensions of identity, and it includes Madison. And like all the iconic spaces that we have in this community, so too is Park Street.
Yes, it is.
And I think that's what's so transformational. We did deconstruct systems.
Yes, we did.
And we are helping to construct place and space for this community, for our community. And it really is looking like our Madison.
Yes. Well, snap. Well, listen, folks, I can't say anything behind that except amen and amen. Listen. This has been, Annette, so exciting, because unlike many of the guests who have been interviewing me, we've worked in so many capacities together over the past decades, and it's exciting to still be here. It's exciting to see that you've taken your experience from working from a utility company and state government to create your own space, your own business, because it's frightening to step out and do what we've done, but we were also trained to do this, and it is feeling like our Madison, and calling us black leaders is really a misnomer, because we're impacting the entire community. I like to tell white folks when they call me a black leader, well, actually, there are more white people following me than black people, because there are more white people in the community.
Right.
And I'm trying I'm trying to speak to everyone, but about our community. So I want to thank you for taking time to be here. I want to thank you for your thoughtful questions, but also for your contributions to our community and for how you've served this community, and you and Mike have raised your family in this community. And it's just, and you're young, so you have still so much more to gain, but to also offer. So thank you.
Thank you.
So
real quick,
yeah, please,
if I may. We recently lost somebody in our community, Jose Lopez.
Yes.
And I wonder if it's okay if we could just take a moment of silence.
We certainly can.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Juan Lopez was a member of the Madison Metropolitan School Board. He was the CEO of Briar Patch, Centro Hispano. We knew each other from campus, and every time I bumped into him, he asked me about how my mother was doing. He remembered her from when she was on campus, and it's a huge loss for the entire community. And so may he rest in peace, because he has worked tirelessly in and for this community.
He planted a lot of seeds.
Yes. So listen, folks, we don't want you just to get comfortable and listen. We want Black Like Me to touch lives, to change hearts, and to go around the world. And so pause and think about what you just heard. Who needs to hear it? Who can you share it with? You can do a number of things. You can share this in your own on your own social media. You can go to wherever it is you downloaded this podcast and write a comment. You can go to Apple Podcasts and you can write a comment. You can give us a review. You can go to alexg.com and you can subscribe to get notices. You can get noticed too, but to get notices of when new episodes come out, you can click our Patreon link and you can become a supporter with as little as a $2 a month donation to help us to continue to create these scintillating and insightful programs. And you can allow what you heard today to become a new way to shape the way you think. So don't just merely be entertained, be changed. Lean in and create the kind of future that you want to be a part of, and be changed and become a part of the change that you want to see. Thank you for all of our listeners who make this fun and worthwhile. Have a great day, and thank you so much for being supporters of Black Like Me podcast.
Black Like Me. Black like me.
Wow, I really enjoyed today's conversation, and I know that you did too. With each episode, I challenge my listeners to do a number of things: to lean in, to learn, to reflect, to share, to donate, but more importantly, to act on what has inspired you in today's episode. The benefit of being around for 8 seasons is that people constantly stop me and tell me how much they love the show, and they even give me ideas and suggestions about Black icebreakers. But I couldn't have pulled this off alone. So let me take a moment so that I can acknowledge and thank my crew. Engineers and producers, Jeremy and Eli. Also a member of my creative team is Chakisha. The music was produced by Corey Saffold, and Marcus Fleming is on vocals. And of course, you, our Patreon supporters, and all of our listeners. Thank you. To everyone who listens to this podcast and you decide to share it with someone who needs it, to everyone who listens and then reposts it on your own social media accounts, to everyone who hears something that moves them to act differently, act better, and to everyone who leans in to understand Black life more honestly, thank you. Black like me.